between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Barker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
The VRRC Civic Cup is back in action tonight here for its penultimate night of racing. 2 races here around the tight, technical, narrow, but very, very fun Croft circuit up in virtual North Yorkshire. 2 races that could mathematically decide the championship. It's very likely that it's still going to go down to the final couple of races next week at Donington Park, but we could mathematically crown a champion in the Civic Cup here tonight. Either way, certainly we're in for another entertaining night of sim racing action here on the VRRC. Andy McEwen here in the commentary box. Jack Oliphant back with us again this week. And Jack, the Croft circuit, I know you have a complicated history with the Croft circuit in your real-life racing career, but I'm really intrigued to see what sort of racing we get here on the sim tonight.
No, I'm gonna take Croft from my most recent experience, which was the Fun Cup, which we covered together,
yes,
Andy, a couple of weeks ago, and that was very fun. So I'm all positive for Croft this week, which is a nice turnaround, I would say. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's the penultimate round, like you mentioned. We've already been to Brands Hatch, Thuxton, Alton Park, and then Silverstone National last week, which I'm sure was an absolute thriller. Probably more thrilling than the cricket game I had to take my dad to. It's the reason why I missed the week. Donington National, of course, next up. So 2 fantastic tracks to see off this brilliant championship as well. You're absolutely right. A couple of drivers can technically win the championship, but I think mathematically you worked out just before we went live, there's 16 that technically still can win, even if it's very, very unlikely.
Yeah, 4 races to go, plus a handful of bonus points that you get for things like fastest laps and pole positions, mean that there are 108 points still available. And as you can see, the championship leader, Scott Bugner, is on 167, so 108 points back from him. Takes you all the way down to Jordan Brennan in 16th. Jordan is not racing tonight, though, so you can already take him out of championship contention. That still leaves you, though, realistically, with 15 people could technically take the championship. Realistically, though, we're very much looking at a head-to-head here between Scott Bugner and Max Edmondson. They've been virtually inseparable all season long, but a week ago at Silverstone, Max had an absolute shocker and scored exactly half the number of points scored by Scott Bugner. 44 points scored by Bugner over the 2 races, 22 by Edmondson, and that meant that Bugner was unsurprisingly the top scorer of the week, with his JS Motorsport teammate Joel Lask the second highest point scorer. Incidentally, again, a bit like HFT racing, it took me far too long to realise that JS Motorsport is Joel and Scott. These 2 initials, the simplest of team names, continuing to confuse me here at the VRRC, but it was Bugner and Lask who were quite clearly the class of the field at Silverstone. Eric Axelsen, who really got his elbows out in a couple of the races last week, the 3rd highest scorer, and that helped move him up into the top half dozen or so in the points. Dave Buki was the winner of race 2, and he therefore received the Power Max Driver of the Round award. It was a very entertaining night of racing last time at Silverstone. Certainly, Jack, some of the best racing we'd seen all season long. Possibly a really crucial one in the championship, with Bugner doing so well.
Yep, indeed, and this is what they're all fighting for, of course. First prize even in the championship, an AGON 34-inch curved gaming display. Absolutely top-notch graphics on that bad boy, and fantastic refresh rate. Exactly what you want in a sim racing monitor. And you want to stick it to something. Well, if you come second, you'll be able to stick your monitor, if you have one already, to a Rig SimRace 3 setup. One of the fantastic VRRC sim rigs, proper sturdy bit of kit, pretty much strap any kind of force feedback wheel you want to that, and it would serve you very well. If you come third, 2 tickets to the TCR UK Championship, a brilliant touring car championship that I'm sure pretty much everybody on this grid will have caught over the weekend and probably be looking forward to Brands Hatch in a couple of weeks' time. 4th place, 2-hour online driving coaching session. That's with Dave Marshall, I believe, obviously our in-house driver coach. 5th place prize is the same as driver of the round. It's a Power Max Valeting bucket. So still lots to play for every single week as a driver of the round, who isn't necessarily someone who scores the most points or is the fastest. It's sometimes someone who just catches our attention, Andy, isn't it? Someone who entertains us and gives us something to get off our seat about.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is exactly what Dave Buki did a week ago, and that's why he was given that award after his superb Race 2 victory. Had a disaster in Race 1, but a really, really strong Race 2 for Dave Buki, and that is why we gave him the Driver of the Round award. Who will get it tonight here at Croft? Well, we'll have to wait and see. 2 races coming your way, a qualifying session imminent, but first let's familiarise ourselves with the really technically demanding Croft circuit.
So here we are at my home track, Croft, for the penultimate round of the Maximum Networks Civic Cup powered by VRRC. Turn 1, I'm going to go down to 3rd. Some drivers might opt to try and carry this in 4th. The key for this though is to be as smooth as possible. See, on the brakes slightly earlier for turn 2 and try to blend that throttle to eliminate as much of that bounce as we can possibly get. Taking a lot of the first curve, but then hardly any of the second curve, just like you do in real life. Too much of a hop from that left side can very quickly find you in the barrier on the left. Not a good place to be at all. Tower bend, quite difficult. I judge the brakes about right there, but just a little bit aggressive with the throttle input, pushing that front end on, but luckily managed still to carry some good speed going through the back S here at Croft. And what a fantastic track it is, a real driver's track and one of the favourites for me on this calendar so far. Out nice and far wide, looking for that dip to break into sunny in, down to 3rd gear, and really trying to optimise. This is one corner, so in sunny in and out, all in one steering input, and it means it gets super early on that throttle and get a good drive on the way out. Now into this left-hander, make sure you're as smooth as possible. You see there was steering input, very, very minimal whatsoever, just trying to keep the car smooth and keep all that momentum. And then in the last corner, you will be setting this up on a lap and going wide, but for when you're on a hot lap, nice and tight to the inside and focusing on getting that good drive out towards the line. There is a lap of Croft make sure you tune in on Wednesday night on VRRC's YouTube, and make sure you give this video a like and subscribe.
The Croft circuit then, which as you can see there from the hot lap, it really does have a little bit of everything. It's got the high-speed stuff out through the Jim Clark S's and Barcroft and into Sunny, but then at the start and end of the lap, these devilishly tight and technical sequences. Here you can see a great view of the final complex, and in particular the final hairpin, which for many years, and indeed may still be the case, was regarded as the tightest and slowest corner in British motor racing. And then that first section, which the cars on their first laps in qualifying are heading down towards now, through Clervaux, into Hawthorne, through the chicane. There is just, Jack, absolutely no margin for error. And although it's not the fastest circuit, although it's not the most undulating of circuits, it is a very unforgiving circuit. And I think in the context of tonight's championship battle that we're monitoring between Scott Bugner, Max Edmondson and a few others, really, for Scott Bugner, this is the worst kind of circuit we could come to at this point of the championship. He cannot afford a bad night, yet Croft is one of those circuits that almost is just lurking there at the end of the calendar, just waiting to catch you out.
Well, exactly, and it's easy to be caught at because you have to take risks around Croft, and sometimes like Silverstone, where you can fit 5 Civic Cups wide through most of the corners, and there's only 5 of them, you can pretty much get away with sort of avoiding the major incidents, or not taking the risk too much as you go through a few of the corners, but especially on the reverse grid race. But here at Croft, apart from Tower Bend and, not even Clervaux is a really clear chance, is it, at the first corner? You are taking risks to go 2 wide, 3 wide. I mean, you can see through the first chicane, not Sunny and Sunny out where we currently are, but through the first chicane, you're going so narrow. You're clipping apexes left and right just by keeping the car dead straight. So going 2 wide is really very risky, and Scott Bugner's already experiencing the slide that you can get into the final complex with the rear wheels of the car here as he tries to get the power planted, get past his teammate, get into the final corner, runs very wide. That is not intentional. You can go as a wide entry to get a late apex to get a run on the next lap, but that was just outright missing the apex, unfortunately, from Scott Bugner. So he does go 4th, but as the flying laps continue to come in, he'll get tumbling down. A driver I noticed is not technically in those sort of 2-way battle for the championship lead, but he is a driver who is in a particular championship battle, as Scott Bugner basically jumps up and down, unfortunately. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, Andy, in practice, he was absolutely flying. He was the fastest driver we had in practice. Currently 5th place in the championship. And keep in mind, obviously, there are 5 prizes, aren't there, of course? So he's still in with a good chance of those sort of TCR tickets, fighting with Max Bird and Joel Lask to move himself up the order.
This is the great thing about having prizes down to 5th place, because otherwise you get to this part of the season and you're Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Okay, you're 5th place in the points, but you're 50 points the top. So if it was only, prizes for 1st, 2nd and 3rd even, you might start to think, well, what's the point in this? I'm not going to get a prize. I may as well just rest up for a couple of weeks and come back stronger for the next championship. But no, he's in 5th position. He's actually only 11 points behind Max Bird in 3rd position. And we cut to Max Bird almost as if we planned that, who is 2nd fastest in the qualifying session, 3rd in the championship. And really, that fight for 3rd is actually a little bit closer than the one for the championship victory outright. And the great thing about the VRRC is that battle for 3rd counts for something as well. Those tickets to a round of TCR UK, which after the action that championship displayed at Donington Park at the weekend, I'm sure there'll be people queuing up for tickets to the next round of TCR UK at Brands Hatch, and this championship will have finished before then, so whoever does finish 3rd in the series could pop along to Brands if they wish in a few weeks' time. But yeah, absolutely right. Prizes down to 5th means that you've got something to fight for, even if you're within 20 or 30 points of that top 5. It's still worth pushing on, as Max Bird is, because he goes fastest in the qualifying session.
Yep, Josh Martin jumps all the way up to 6th position as well. So some quick times coming around, sort of starting to roll themselves in, I suppose. And one driver is Eric Axelson. I was just about to mention Eric Axelson. He probably set that time about 2 seconds too early. But he's currently 6th in the championship. And he's another driver that really would be fighting, I suppose, for those 4th and 5th positions. The 2 hours online coaching session, which I know Eric has won before in a previous championship. even if I can't remember what that actual championship was. I know he's won it because we've interviewed him about it before now. And obviously that 5th place prize of the Power Max Valeting kit. So, and with a strong Silverstone under his belt, I'm sure he'll be hoping for some momentum to kick forward into Croft, even if it is a very, very different circuit. A couple of drivers to keep an eye out, though. Elliot Dalton has just gone purple in Sector 1, actually, as we cut to... In fact, there we go. Cut to Elliot Dalton. There's Max Edmondson has gone green in Sector 1. Nicky Taylor's gone green as well. He's obviously only joined halfway through this championship. But starting to see the tyres switch on, the drivers getting to the groove, Andy. We're starting to get some low times on our hands.
It was the Mazda MX-5s I'm looking back at that Eric Axelson finished third in, just to put your mind at rest. So yeah, 3rd place in the MX-5s. But he's been a consistent sort of top 5-6 runner in the Touring Car Trophy and in the Cayman Cup last time. He's a very consistent driver, is Eric Axelson, and once again finds himself back into that top 5 battle in the points. Dalton Ayres, though, you made the point earlier on, very much still in contention for a good finishing position here. 5th in the championship, 4th the moment in this qualifying session, 1 place ahead of Max Edmondson, who again at the moment is set to be out qualified by Scott Bugner. Bugner 2nd fastest, Edmondson 5th. Interesting that despite Edmondson's really poor go at Silverstone, he still retains 4 kilos of handicap weight in that car compared to the 30 kilos of Scott Bugner and the 10 kilos for Elliot Dalton Ayres, and that perhaps is what proves the difference, because Dalton Ayres goes fastest by 1/10 of a second over Max Bird, who is 2nd fastest, Bugner 3rd, Axelson 4th, Edmondson there in 5th, and Nicky Taylor rounding out that top 6 at the moment with half of the session still to go.
We were talking about the ballast. Well, you just talked about the ballast. You were talking about the slow hairpin as well a little bit earlier on, as we were sort of doing a little bit of a run through of the track, weren't you, Andy? And I think that hairpin is going to be one of the biggest sticking points for these high-weighted cars, because of course the more weight you've got, the harder it is to stop the car, and it also the harder it is to accelerate away from a slow corner. So really, that final corner is going to be a bit of a problem for the drivers like Max Edmondson. And I don't believe we've got many other high kilo cars out there, but Scott Bugner, Eric Axelson, Nicky Taylor will probably have a disadvantage compared to Elliot Dalton Ayres, Max Bird, Josh Martin and Andy Dorman and Andy Carroll, just because they won't be able to get out that final corner, which is crucial. I mean, at the Fun Cup we saw a couple of weeks ago, we saw people lunging into that final corner to get past, and also trying to get a nice little bit of a cutback out on the exit as well. So it's a crucial bit of the circuit, as every corner is, I suppose you could argue, but particularly at Croft here, to get this corner right pretty much means everything for this particular lap and your next flying lap.
Yeah, in qualifying, certainly a good exit from that hairpin is important, but you're right, in the race we will absolutely see people lunging up the inside into that hairpin, and if you can't get it stopped and turned, you're not going to be able to do that, and that's certainly not going to help your forward progress in the races, especially that reversed grid race coming up at the end of the night. There goes Nicky Taylor, making his way through Clervaux into Hawthorne Corner. Nicky, who joined the championship late. Remember, it was one of the fascinations for me to see how high up the order he could get, only competing in the final 4 weeks. Well, he's doing pretty well so far. He is 19th in the points, but actually within about 20 points or so of top dozen. So another good night here tonight for Nicky Taylor. Really see him picking up the positions in the championship, and I still maintain he could make it well into the top 10 by the end of the season, even though he didn't turn up for the first couple of weeks. So Taylor, 6th fastest at the moment, 30 kilos of handicap ballast on board that Civic, and he makes his way through the Jim Clark S's there as he comes towards the completion of yet another lap. John Jones at the moment the slowest in the session, and grassy moments like that down at Tower Corner won't help him. Again though, Jack, when we were there a few weeks ago at Croft, we saw just how easy it is to do that. It's a bumpy braking zone into Tower, and so tempting to get on that throttle a bit too early, and the grass comes up very, very quickly.
Yeah, you're absolutely desperate though, aren't you? It's one of the most important corners on the circuit. Not only is it an overtaking manoeuvre, but also because it basically dictates your lap time. If you want to get out of there, if you get on the power nice and early but controlled, you then pretty much flat out all the way through Sunny in, and then obviously through Sunny out, a bit of a heavy braking zone and get the car turned in. But that is a good sort of quarter or a third of the lap. You're pretty much flat out, and it all stems from Tower Bend. So it is really important for these drivers to nail that one. You really want to be nice and smooth on the throttle application, not too aggressive on the turn-in either, to keep the car from hopping all over the place. It's a little bit of on a knife edge, but again, it's easily one of the most important corners out there on the circuit. During the race, we won't see it as much in terms of sort of momentum, but we will see a lot of people trying to dive into it. It's one of the best overtaking opportunities because it is a heavy braking zone, but it's also an area that comes to the end of a heavy slipstreaming zone, which you would have seen at Silverstone, helps a lot in these Civics to get them racing wheel to wheel.
Ooh, Brad Smith there, just a little bit wide out of Tower Corner. Now, Brad was a driver who went pretty well at Silverstone, I seem to recall. Yes, second place in the second race of the night. It was interesting, actually, because at Silverstone National, arguably the easiest of the circuits we've raced at so far on which to overtake. Actually, we saw the two drivers that started on row 1 for race number 2 staying in those positions. Dave Buki was on pole, he took the win. Brad Smith was second on the grid and finished in third. And actually, even Andy Carroll, who finished third place in that second race, had only come from on the grid. So I wonder if we'll see a similar sort of situation tonight. Great to see those drivers getting their moment at the front, though. And by the looks of it, Brad Smith may well be waiting for that reverse grid again for his chance to challenge for a podium finish, because he's 15th fastest in the qualifying session. Again, bobbling a bit wide there through Tower Corner didn't help his chances. Nicky Taylor out of the hairpin then, seeing relatively few changes in position here, certainly towards the pointy end of the grid as we move into these final 3 minutes of the session. Can Nicky Taylor prove me wrong? Well, it is an improved time, I think, but a 35.629 still only good enough for 6th position. So for whatever reason, Jack, most of the drivers seemingly getting the best out of their cars in the first half of the session.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you look, there might not be that many changes of positions, but all the times are pretty close. I think from 6th down to 11th, it's all covered by about a 1/10 of a second, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe a 1/10 and a half. So realistically, for a circuit that is so complex and hard to get to grips with and everything like that, and it's important to get the sort of gap in the traffic. We're seeing awfully close times, which is what, sort of bodes well for the race, I suppose. It's hopefully gets everybody a little bit excited, a little bit pumped up. And if you do miss out on a couple of positions, it sort of hurts all the more, unfortunately, because you were so close to just jumping up another row or so. So it might play with people's heads as well. Hopefully, everybody keeps nice and calm. But it's, hopefully, if everybody who's in the YouTube chat and everybody who's watching this will be starting to get excited for what the penultimate round brings.
It's certainly going to be close, isn't it? And therefore, all the more important, as you say, to qualify well, but also to get a good start, because as close as the lap times are out there, it's not going to be that easy to make huge progress. If you're all capable of circulating the circuit at more or less the same pace, then making overtakes on people isn't always the easiest thing to do. Andy Carroll pushing hard here in 9th position. One driver quite a bit out of position, I would say. And in fact, he's in the pit lane as well, so he's not going to improve with a minute and a half to go now. Hasn't got time to get back around. Is Joel Lask. In fact, he's just headed out onto the circuit. I don't think he's got enough time to get around to start a lap. Joel Lask, 11th fastest at the moment. 4th in the championship, just a single point behind Max Bird, who is 3rd. Max is 2nd fastest in the qualifying session. So Joel Lask, one of a few drivers, I think, who will be disappointed after this qualifying session. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, though, improves on his provisional pole position time by a fraction, but it puts him now just outside that 1/10 of a second margin over Max Bird. 0.109 between the top two, and then yes, a 1/4 of a tenth back to Buckner in 3rd place. Edmondson within a 1/10 of that. He's 1/2 a tenth ahead of Eric Axelson, a similar margin back to Nicky Taylor. So those top 6 in particular, very evenly matched. Any advantage that Dalton-Ayres can find here is going to be really important come the race.
Right now, you are basically seeing a potential lineup for 6th to 1st, and obviously 7th back to pretty much 11th, aren't you? Or 12th, you could even argue, for sort of 2 standout races that we're going to see. And fingers crossed that they keep it all nice and clean, because as I said, Andy, it is a little bit tight and narrow here, isn't it? And people can get a little bit desperate at Croft. It's not so easy to get past, like you mentioned. And I think it's really important to sort of almost survive this race 1. Just try and keep your points, stash your points, because God knows what's going to happen in race 2. Everything could hit the fan, basically, couldn't it? And it's not what we want to see, but that's just the nature of Croft sometimes. People, if you get a little bit desperate, you start pushing the envelope, you can find yourself very quickly going 2 abreast through a chicane where you really don't want to. The checkered flag has dropped as Elliot Dalton-Ayres has gone and put in another purple sector 2. Pretty much every other lap he's been able to improve on that sector 2, and he's easily the fastest man out there in that particular section. So you're going to have to look out for Elliot. That's where he's going to pull a lot of time out of the bag during the race. He comes across the line and it improves on sector 3, but his sector 1 wasn't good enough, so his time is just a bit down. In fact, he equaled his previous best time, I believe, on that one, so still very quick. Everybody else has taken the checker flag, Andy. We haven't seen any improvement, just Kenny Press to finish off, but he's not on a faster time, I don't believe. So we should be able to shoot to an advert if we just hold off. I think Kenny Press is in the pit lane, so we'll go to an advert before we interview Elliot Dalton-Ayres.
Rounds 9 and 10 of the VRRC Civic Cup coming your way very shortly. Qualifying done, and the first 20-minute race is just around the corner. On pole position for that race, we will have a new pole sitter actually for this season. Only the third different driver to stick it on pole position for an opening race of the night, and it is Elliot Dalton-Ayres who claims that first pole position of the season. And Elliot, well done. Really, really tight out there. Pole position by just over a tenth of a second doesn't sound like a huge amount, but given how evenly matched everyone is, that's actually quite a good showing. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very tight with the pack today, so it's quite important in the first race to get a really good start and get away from the pack. Hopefully they battle and then just kind of go smooth sailing from there.
I think we're definitely going to see some battling again, given how tightly bunched the field was in qualifying. Croft is not an easy place necessarily to overtake, but I'm sure you'll be watching your mirrors, assuming you get off the line well, you'll be watching your mirrors for those opening few laps. Is there anywhere in particular where you think you're really going to have to get defensive to keep hold of that race lead?
Possibly into the hairpin. I'm not that quick through there. You know, maybe some dives or lunges, should I say? But yeah.
Yeah, that is always a popular place to have a go at the inside, isn't it? First pole position, like I say, I've just noticed looking back through the results from the season so far, you're also looking for that first race victory. Certainly, you put yourself in the right position so far. Win would be important, wouldn't it? Because from a championship perspective, you're fifth in the points, only 11 points off third place Max Bird. So if you could get that race win, it would be important for more than one reason.
Yeah, kind of thinking of points now coming to the second last round, and yeah, I need to pick those points up to get back into I am in the top 5.
And third place, I'm sure, well within your reach. Of course, Max is going to be starting right with you. So do you have a particularly close eye on what Max is doing? It's important to try and start taking points out of him, isn't it?
Yeah, if we both get a good start, I'm going to try and cover him off into turn 1 and then hopefully go from there. Hopefully one of the, I think that's Scott Bugner behind me, can maybe battle him, and that allows me to get ahead. Excellent
stuff. Well, we'll wait and see how the start of the race goes. Best of luck with that, and congratulations on the first pole of the season.
Thank you.
Elliot Dalton-Ayres then will line up his number 84 HFT Racing Civic from the pole position, the only HFT Racing driver championship contention, actually, which is a bit odd, isn't it, Jack? The last championship we covered here on the VRRC, the Cayman Cup, it seemed to be dominated by HFT racing drivers, but it's just Elliot, of the 3 HFT drivers, who seems to have wrapped his head around this Civic the best. He starts on pole position, but as I said, Max Bird, who he's kind of fighting with for third in the championship at the very least, lining up right alongside him. And then the championship contenders, Scott Bugner and Max Edmondson, together on row 2. I sense some fireworks here.
Yeah, I very much agree with you, to be honest. But just going back to that HFT storyline with Elliot compared to Kyle and Nicky, we obviously focused a lot on Kyle and Nicky last time, and which deservedly so, considering they were the top 2 in the championship. I felt a bit sorry for Elliot because we didn't mention him that much, but right now he's really in the limelight, isn't he? And to be honest, we're seeing 2 brilliant championship battles: the battle for third on the front row and the battle for first on the second row, which is a bit of an awkward way round. Joel Lask has got himself up to 6th as well, so we can't really take our attention away from him. He's currently 4th in the championship. A lovely panning shot here by Tom O'Farrell as well. He's very proud of his drone shot that he got working a couple of weeks ago, and I have to say, it is quite effective.
It gives us a brilliant view of the Croft circuit, and you can see it is not the widest of runs down into that first corner. We've seen on several occasions in the past, certainly in real-world racing, it can all go wrong long before you ever get to that first corner, Clervaux, and then you've got to try and negotiate the real pinch point through the first corner into Hawthorne, back around through the chicane. So Elliot Dalton-Ayres then on pole position. He will be looking to try and lead the pack through that first corner as round number 9 of the VRRC Civic Cup is about to get underway here at Croft. A really, really important pair of races here. As we've said, Scott Bugner, Max Edmondson sharing that second row of the grid. There are 24 points between them in the championship in Scott Bugner's favour. So crucial here that Max Edmondson tries to beat him, even if it's just by a position or so. Start chipping away the points advantage for the championship leader. And hope, maybe, that something goes wrong for Scott, who's had a pretty good so far. He has yet to finish lower than 5th in any of the 8 races that we've had so far. He's only been off the podium in 3 of those races. A truly remarkable season for Scott. Can he keep that going here at Croft? Then we're waiting for the red lights to go on. There we go. Getting ready then into the final countdown for round number 9 of the VRRC Civic Cup. Left-hand side of the shot, the yellow and white car is Elliot Dalton-Ayres, alongside in the white and red of Max Bird. Who gets off the line best? Who gets into Clervaux first? Time to find out. Lights go out, and a very even start from both of the front row men, actually. Down towards Clervaux, they will run 2 by 2. Keep an eye to Bugner and Edmondson, already nearly banging doors as they head into the first corner. Max Bird getting his nose ahead. There's a car off in the background, but it's side by side for the lead through turn 1. And Bird trying to hang it tough round the outside of Elliot Dalton-Ayres. There's a hip check. Out wide will go Max Bird. Bugner has got himself, or stayed ahead of Max Edmondson, and crucially gets into second place. So the championship leader gaining ground, and Edmondson stuck down in 4th.
Yeah, as Bugner did everything he needed to there. You can see something was going to explode in front of him between Dalton-Ayres and Bird, and indeed it did. So as he goes for the normal racing line, Elliot Dalton-Ayres goes slightly defensive. I think that's Max Bird trying to look up the inside, but it's more, again, to stave off the attacks from behind. The likes of Max Edmondson, who's that bouncing around in the background as well? Is that Max or is that Joel Lask? I can't quite tell because they're side by side for 4th position. No, as they go through the Jim Clark S's, it's still Max Edmondson in 4th place.
Joel Lask, of course, teammate to Scott Bugner, so if he can get himself ahead of Max Edmondson, he's not only gaining himself championship points, but doing his teammate the world of good. And is very late on the brakes into Sonny. He's too late, goes out wide. Up the inside goes Lask, and Axelson past the pair of them maybe. Somehow Edmondson finds a route around the outside through Sonny out, and he's held on to 4th. I can't believe that. Somehow Edmondson's still in 4th place, but that was a really, really close moment, and I think he knew that the attack was coming there from Joel Lask. Now, speaking of attacks, the race leaders into the hairpin together. Dalton-Ayres still leads the way, but Bugner wants the lead, and I'm intrigued here, Jack, to see just how aggressive Scott Bugner feels he has to be. He's got the points lead already, but if he feels he's got the pace for a race victory, how hard is he willing to push for that?
Well, the problem is, if he doesn't get past Dalton-Ayres, Bird will be very motivated to push through and attack Dalton-Ayres, which means he'll dispatch a Bugner probably any which way he feels appropriate. Then all of a sudden, Edmondson's going to take advantage as the car's, again, hopping around more than your favourite beer. But Scott Bugner has gone through into the race lead on Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Max Bird, all of a sudden, has Dalton-Ayres back in his sights.
And Max Edmondson's heart sinks, because not only is he still languishing down in 4th place, but of course that battle he had with Lask and Axelson has dropped them away slightly from the leading trio. So Edmondson now needs to pull his socks up here and gain some places, go after Scott Bugner and limit the damage being done in the points. Further back, Mark Hughes here around the outside of Reese Bell through Tower Corner. This is the scrap for 14th place, and just ahead, Brad Smith there has Andy Carroll behind him. Kyle Felvers ahead. Felvers inside the top 10, but again struggling a little bit compared to his HFT teammates as they head towards Sunny for the second time.
Yeah, but we keep mentioning Kyle, and he's probably sick to death of it, really, that he doesn't like the front-wheel drive, as Brad Smith goes very, very wide, manages to get back onto the circuit, probably lose a position to Andy Dorman, but just like we saw Edmondson actually before, I think the outside line and hitting the grass isn't the end of the world, because he does retain that position. So Brad Smith losing a little bit of time and goes very wide, actually, into the final complex. Just about holds on to it, though, doesn't he? Just behind Andy Carroll. Dorman up ahead of him, then Kyle Felvers. But at the front, you're absolutely right. Scott Bugner in the lead. Elliot Dalton-Ayres second. Max Bird in third. Max Edmondson in 4th. And Eric Axelson. I was about to scream Eric Axelson's name when I thought he was going to take 2 positions through Sunny out. He didn't quite manage it, but still a good showing in 5th.
Yeah, it was strange, wasn't it? The momentum seemed to be on the outside line, but you're right, it absolutely looked like he was going to pick the pockets there of Max Edmondson and Joel Lask ahead. He got past Lask, who ends up dropping down to 6th, and actually, that's not bad news if you're Max Edmondson, because it just relieves a little bit of the pressure on your shoulders. He's dropping back from the leading 3, though. Edmondson doesn't, at the moment, seem to have the pace of those leading 3 cars. There he is, look, the man who really was the dominant force over the first 3 rounds of the championship, winning race 1 at all 3 of the first weeks of racing. But it was his reversed grid performances where he had a 14th, a 7th and a 4th and now an 11th last time at Silverstone. That really is where he's dropped the points to Bugner, who, as I said, has never been out of the top 5 all season long. Andy Dorman was one of the stars at Silverstone. He actually took that car on pole position on the Silverstone National Circuit before finishing 5th in that opening race. He currently runs in 10th position, just behind Carl Felvers. Oh, and there's a shunt heading into Barcroft.
Yeah, and I believe that's with Kenny Press and John Jones potentially. Mark Hughes, I think, is currently just joining. Oh, look at that. Brad Smith's steering wheel is absolutely. He's turning right whilst having the steering wheel turning left. That's not how Civic Cups are designed. It looks more like a NASCAR setup right now, doesn't it, unfortunately? This is Reese Bell in 13th position. Does Reese have any kind of damage? It doesn't look like it, potentially, but there was a big amount of contact. And as I said, I think John Jones and Kenny Press were the 2 drivers that were involved. And that looks like Reese Bell's front bumper and Kenny Press's rear bumper and front bumper all seem a little bit damaged. I think it's safe to say that there was... It wasn't ideal that we can't call it either way because we didn't see it, but probably one for the stewards afterwards.
Yes, and those friendly tyre stacks on the apexes of the corners just waiting to turn a minor incident into an enormous pile-up, unfortunately. Right, back with the leading trio, and Max Bird following Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who he's done with following Scott Bugner. What a lunge that was into Tower Corner, and Dalton-Ayres back into the lead of the race. Got the car stopped as well. That was a beautiful move, that, from Dalton-Ayres. That is how you make a dive bomb, and you make it cleanly. As long as you're confident that you're going to stop for the apex and not bounce into the side of the car you're trying to overtake, then that is a perfectly legitimate move to make. And now that rather puts Bugner on the back foot here. Max Bird trying to get to the inside. Couldn't quite make it stick through Barcroft, but that was a lovely bit of driving that from Dalton-Ayres, and it gets him the race lead.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, I mean, he's probably got a load cell in his pedal or something, because that was really nicely on the brakes, and he bled off and actually managed to make the corner on the exit as well really nicely, which sometimes can be a little bit tricky as Scott Bugner sends it into the complex through the left-hand side, manages to open the corner up nicely to try and get into the final corner without any kind of attacks from Max Bird, who goes for that wide entry and late apex, and that's because they've got about a second gap between themselves and 4th place man Max Edmondson, who can't seem to live with the pace of the battling top 3 at the moment. They haven't battled that hard, Andy. I mean, they might end up losing a little bit of time further into the race, but they're working smart here, aren't they, the top 3?
I think, well, they are, sort of. They are fighting each other, of course, slightly, but Edmondson just doesn't seem to have the pace. He's carrying this 40 kilos of ballast in the car, the handicap ballast. He's actually been heavier. He was at 50 kilos last week, so he's dropped 10 kilos, which is where he was for most of the first half of the season, where he was so dominant. So not quite sure what the reason is for Edmondson, but what he will like is this side-by-side racing he's seeing ahead, because Scott Bugner is answering my question here about how aggressive he's willing to be. May have a healthy lead in the points. He may currently be on course to outscore his nearest rival again. He wants another race win. Bugner with just the 1 victory so far this season, and he can sense another one. Dalton-Ayres back in front of him. Bugner had a real go there around the outside at Tower.
He absolutely did, but if I was Bugner, I'd maybe be thinking, although to be fair, he probably doesn't know, but just behind is Axelson going through on Edmondson, and that's exactly what I was about to bring up. Bugner can still gain the same points advantage by Axelson overtaking Edmondson than if Bugner went into the lead pretty much. So all he has to do is hope that Eric can do his dirty work, and that seems to be what he's done. Joel Lask, in fact, his teammate, is next up on the agenda and gives him a bit whack up the rear for good measure as well. So Joel Lask throwing his body weight around, shall we say, trying to get past his teammate's championship rival.
I know the drivers that we can see sat in the cars are not the real drivers, but I can still almost see the steam emanating from the helmet of Max Edmondson's cockpit, because not only there did he lose that place to Axelson, but the tap in the tail from Joel Lask will have done Edmondson's blood pressure no good at all. That in the end didn't cost him a place. He's still in 5th position, but it did cost him a chance at immediately retaliating against Eric Axelsen. Again, the fact that Lask is Bugner's teammate will not be lost on Edmondson. He knows the danger that he's in here. He needs to try and get back ahead of Eric Axelsen. At the moment, the only saving grace for Edmondson really is that he would line up ahead of Bugner for race number 2, but so strong have Bugner's reverse grid performances been, I'm not sure that counts for much.
No, exactly, and your championship is only as good as your worst results, and I think you mentioned before Edmondson's reverse grid results have not been strong. Keep in mind as well, it's not just Joel Lask's only motivation is not his teammates, obviously. It's his own championship battle where he's seeing his top three rivals, Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Max Bird, well up the road as well. So Lask is a little bit of damage limitation here in this first race. He's probably hoping that Bugner actually does him a favour by lunging Dalton-Ayres in the same way Dalton-Ayres lunged him earlier in the race. Here's Edmondson going defensive. Axelsen has driven away, and Joel Lask, I think, was actually hanging around the outside. I thought he carried enough momentum there. As who's that just going through? Nicky Taylor on Josh Martin. Nicky Taylor, the only front-wheel drive driver, really, in that HFT team. Still going wheel-to-wheel with Josh Martin, who's impressing in this second half. Nicky getting very late with the cutback, and I was about to say it's a really good move, but actually he makes contact, not once, but twice, and takes out Andy Dorman in good measure.
Oh dear, that was all a little unfortunate, wasn't it, coming out of the hairpin? It's a common place to have contact there coming off the corner, but in front-wheel drive cars, you floor the throttle to try and save the slide, but you've got to be careful not to overdo it and spear back into the pack, as we saw there for Josh Martin, who rejoins in 9th position, Taylor 11th, Paul Andy Dorman, who has nothing to do with that, down in 13th place. Right, leaders back at Tower Corner, and Elliot Dalton-Ayres defending the inside line there from Scott Bugner. That almost Bugner up into Max Bird. Can Bird get the switch back here, carry the speed off Tower? That's what he's trying to do, but there's nowhere to go. Whichever side of the road he wants to go, he has a face full of Scott Bugner's number 77 car as they turn into the quick left-right at the Jim Clark S's. These top three pretty inseparable. I'm not convinced that Dalton-Ayres is fast enough, certainly at the moment, on the current evidence, to pull away from this group. So it is a genuine fight, this, for the race lead, and one that is not likely to settle down anytime soon.
Which is what we like to see, isn't it? We got 9 minutes. We want a 9-minute race, pretty much. We don't want it all to get a bit boring after an exciting start like we've had. Max Bird, in fact, running very wide, and also Dalton-Ayres going very, very wide. I don't think that's his normal line from what we've seen. He's managed to get the car stopped, but almost within touching distance is Bugner to look at the inside, maybe? No, not quite. Bird trying to get that late apex again, but actually doesn't get through the corner quite as nicely as he has done previously. Coming across the line, I'm very interested in seeing Eric Axelsen's last lap time as well, actually. So as they come across the line, let's just have a look at it. Yeah, Eric Axelsen, half a second quicker than Max Bird. Now, Bird didn't get a brilliant exit. A lot of that might have been the final corner, but it just goes to show that Axelsen may well make this a four-way battle within the next 5 minutes or so. How far? He's got a 2-second gap pretty much to make up. If they keep battling like the top three are, that could come down just very, very quickly. Another thing to notice, after that contact that we saw with Nicky Taylor, I believe he slowed up a significant amount to try and let the drivers back through who he made contact with. I can't see whether he's actually managed to achieve that margin, but Nicky Taylor now all the way down in 11th place.
Yeah, well, it was Josh Martin with whom he tangled, and it's Martin that is ahead of him. And now, of course, Taylor trying to get back up the inside at Tower, having given the place back. He has no qualms now about taking it back away, but does so cleanly this time. So good stuff there from Nicky. We've seen him do that before, I seem to remember. If he's ever had a little bit of contact with drivers on track, he'll always, if he feels it's his fault anyway, will always try to give the position back. But he's back into the top 10 now. Poor old Andy Dorman, though, benefits not in the slightest from that. But then, in fairness, it wasn't really Nicky Taylor's fault that Dorman got caught up in it. He's stuck back here fighting for 12th place now with Reece Bell. It's certainly been a bit of a back down to earth after his storming pace at Silverstone. Andy Dorman found himself back in the midfield here at Croft, and the midfield is not always a pleasant place to be. If something's going to go wrong, there's a good chance that if you're running anywhere between about 7th and 12th, you're likely to be in it.
Classic touring car racing, really, isn't it? It's Civic Cup, known for breeding touring cars, as well as other championships like the Mini Cup Challenge and all these sort of other front-wheel drive tin-top championships. And it's because you basically learn the hard way of how it can go down in touring cars, and that's exactly what we're potentially seeing here in the Civic Cup between that midfield battle as well. What is brilliant, though, is the top three are actually battling really well and really cleanly, so it's fantastic to see them. As Andy Carroll tries to hunt down the HFT teammate of Nicky Taylor in the form of Kyle Felvers, and obviously Elliot Dalton-Ayres in the race lead at the moment. Kyle Felvers, well, running pretty strong in the top 10, to be honest. This is probably one of his slightly better results, really. He'd probably be quite satisfied with this, because at the end of the day, he's picking up some half-decent points.
His best race 1 result so far, he had a podium, remembering, in the reverse grid race at Alton Park, but Felvers' best race 1 result is 6th last time at Silverstone. Before that, it was 12th. So he's definitely been getting better into the second half of the season. He missed race 1 at Thruxton, you remember, but yeah, every other week he did struggle in the opening race, sometimes able to then salvage a decent result in race 2. But here, he's been a bit more competitive right from the get-go, not quite matching that 6th place from Silverstone, but could do by the end of the race. Back through the Jim Clark S's comes the fight for 12th, and now Andy Dorman and Reece Bell have swapped with Dorman into 13th, and they both caught Mark Hughes in the Maximum Networks liveried car, the white and green livery, and it looks like Dorman should be able to make this move stick. He out-qualified Hughes and should have the speed to go through. Is he going to do it into the complex corner? Looks up the inside. That's a difficult place to make an overtake, though, and Mark Hughes is, for the time being, able to hang on. Goes very wide, though, and Dorman could have another go through the middle part of the complex.
Yep, he's go for that sort of cutback area, but Mark Hughes actually managing to just about cover that off. It does look very weird, doesn't it, with the front bumpers sort of hanging off the way they are. But look at that, Reece Bell trying to go for the cutback and take advantage of Dorman's late apex, but out of the corner they come. Dorman manages to hold on to that position, get a half-decent run, not going to have this slipstream and be able to lunge into Clairvaux, but Hughes and Dorman having a right little good ding-dong here, aren't they? And just goes to show, wherever you are on the grid, you can have a very entertaining race, as Dorman pretty much ignores track limits completely on the left-hand side there. Would have absolutely murdered those track limit markers, shall we call them, and just gets a good run through here. So going into Tower Bend, we could well see a move, but we've actually gone forward to see Joel Lask lining up Max Edmondson.
Yeah, this is the closest battle on the track, and it's one of the most important as well. Max Edmondson can't really afford to be throwing away more points here. 5th position, that's 3 places behind Scott Bugner, the championship leader, and now he's got Bugner's teammate Lask right behind him. As Jack made the point, Lask is going for a top 3 place in the championship himself, and actually is within 20 points of Edmondson actually for second. So if Edmondson keeps on dropping points here, we could end up with a really fascinating fight for second in the championship, which maybe allows Bugner to get away. So for multiple reasons here, it's important that Lask makes this move, but it's also important that he does it cleanly. To make sure there's no contact. They've had a couple of little love taps already, nothing too significant, nothing that's cost Max Edmondson dearly, but it looks like Joel Lask, you can see the effect maybe of the slipstream, but also the fact that his car is 20 kilos lighter than Edmondson. You can see that effect down the pit straight. He got out of the hairpin better, to top speed, the car's handling better, and of course, Jack, will be looking after its tyres better too. We're into the final 3.5 minutes. This is where tyre wear starts to tell.
It absolutely is. We've seen some drivers complaining about it. I think we had a chat to Max Edmondson about it at Brands Hatch and Alton Park. It was quite bad, and it's going to be interesting to see whether that's the same sort of story here at Croft as well. Drivers started to come off the boil, basically, and we have started to see that top 3 battle start to sort of dilute itself, I would say. 0.8 of a second now, the difference between first and second. 0.4 second to third, so that battle's still potentially on. Eric Axelsen, I mentioned about 5 minutes ago, was actually catching up to the top 3. Well, he's absolutely proved me wrong, because he's being dropped by the tune of about 1.2 seconds since I said that. Nicky Taylor going side by side with Dave Buki, driver of the round last time out at Silverstone. Nicky getting very bouncy through the Jim Clark S's and just about having to come off the throttle, I believe, to calm the car down, and going into sunny in, sunny out. Dave Buki holds on to that position, but for how much longer, Nicky Taylor, we know, is keen to get his elbows out which way is possible, as both of the drivers ahead of him, that's Carl Felvers, his teammate, and Dave Buki, go wide through sunny out.
Yes, they do. Dave Buki getting his defensive boots on here, but look at that.
Oh.
Taylor around the outside, almost got the inside for the middle part of the complex. Carl Felvers, meanwhile, is off, and then he's into the side of Josh Martin. Not going quite to plan here for Kyle, it must be said. Back out of the top 10 now, whilst Nicky Taylor goes on the attack a few places up the road, out of the hairpin he goes then, and a bit more damage done to the front of Carl Felvis' car as we go on to what should be the penultimate lap of the race. There are the leading three, pretty equidistant now. Dalton Ayres about 8/10 back to Bugner, about the same back to Bird in third, 3 seconds back to Eric Axelson. Now, is Eric being caught here by Max Edmondson? I think he might be. Could Edmondson perhaps still have a chance of snatching 4th place? There you can see the gap. It's definitely coming down, isn't it? Whether it's coming down enough, I'm not so sure, but Edmondson will be fueled here by the fact that that green car is getting a little bit closer ahead of him.
He just seems to be taking the corners at about 60-70%, doesn't he, Axelson? And he's, as I mentioned earlier, he was catching the top 3, and now this pace is just absolutely gone. Even though that last lap time was not too bad, it was still a 36, but it was a 36.7, whereas Max Edmondson's was a 36.1, a good 0.6 of a second quicker. And to be honest, you said, Andy, that it might not be enough. And I'm going to half disagree with you, actually. I think Edmondson is really going to struggle to... Axelson's really going to struggle to keep Edmondson ahead of him as Nicky Taylor goes very wide, trying to take on Dave Buki again.
He went very wide. He was giving a bit of assistance in going wide, I think, there. There was definitely a bit of paint traded between the two of them into Sonny, and Buki hangs on to that 8th position. But yeah, you might be right. Axelson, for whatever reason, struggling at this part of the race, and it may prove to be 1 lap too long for Eric. Let's see. It could be absolutely brilliant news for Edmondson if he's able to snatch that 4th place away. Out of the hairpin come Buki and Nicky Taylor, who will be ruining that little bit of contact he had with Josh Martin at this part of the circuit midway through the race. Dropped back to give the position back, but had to give multiple positions back because Martin had been quite some way off the road, and Nicky Taylor therefore now finds himself fighting for 8th place at best. Through the Clervaux corner they go. Buki a bit wide, but just gets over to the inside to defend into Hawthorne. Taylor almost into the back of him, trying to just stick the nose in the inside through Hawthorne. He's on the grass there, and again, that was never going to end well, and so sensibly Taylor backs out of it.
Keep in mind that reverse grid, it's, I believe, is it still top 10 or will be full reverse grid? Having a week off has fried my mind.
Sorry, full grid reverse, yes.
Oh, I was going to say they're actually fighting for potentially top 2 rows on the grid. Of course, Nicky Taylor going and taking advantage of Dave Buki going very wide through Tower Bend as Josh Martin also goes wide out of it, side by side through the Jim Clark S's. It's going to be Nicky Taylor on the right hand side, but Dave Buki's just about managed to smash into the wall with potential help from Nicky Taylor, and that's one for the stewards, I believe, Andy.
Yes, let's move on, shall we? Leaders into the hairpin then for the final time, and Elliot Dalton Ayres all of a sudden having to come over all defensive. Scott Bugner has reeled him in to the tune of 8/10 over the last couple of laps. It's not quite going to be enough. The checkered flag waves, and it is a first victory of the season for Elliot Dalton Ayres. He converts pole position into the race win, but it wasn't quite as simple as that, it must be said. He had to fight hard there with Scott Bugner and Max Bird throughout the early part of the race. They finished 2nd and 3rd respectively. Axelson 4th, Edmondson a lowly 5th. And the fight going on with Nicky Taylor and Josh Martin again. These two, Kyle Felvis, excuse me, and Josh Martin. And Kyle Felvis is going to come out of that, despite that odd accident that he had at the complex earlier on, with a strong place finish. Now, Dave Buki is in the wall as he tangled with Reece Bell coming to the line, and Nicky Taylor coming past him as well, and something tells me those two might not be exchanging Christmas cards come the end of the season. Ends up with Buki in 13th and Nicky Taylor just behind him in 14th. Well, a dramatic end to the race there. We'll be chatting to our podium finishers, though, after what was a very entertaining 9th round of the VRRC Civic Cup after this short break. The 9th round of the VRRC Civic Cup here at Croft certainly served us up plenty of entertainment, some really good racing up and down the order, and in particular, actually, amongst the top 3 finishers who join us now in the commentary box. And it is going to be pole position converted into a race win for Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Got his first pole position earlier on in the night, and now, Elliot, your first race win of the season as well, but it wasn't all that simple, was it?
No, I got an alright start. I think Max got alongside me, but I managed to fend him off. But then second lap, just got a bit of the bounce, which was terrorising everyone, and Scott managed to get through, but I pulled a dive on him, which managed to get me back into the lead and just defended from there.
Yeah, that dive you made down into Tower Corner, let's talk about that, because I'm sure Scott probably felt that he had the inside line covered there, but you managed to go from the outside of him, dive to the inside, late on the brakes, tight line, and still got the car stopped for the corners. I think it's safe to say you're confident on the brakes.
Not gonna lie, it surprised me as well. It was pretty good move, but yeah.
Well, you might need to pull a few more of those moves out now in race number 2, starting from the back of the grid as you will be. It's not going to be easy out there, is it? It's a narrow circuit, and that first sector in particular on lap 1. How cautious are you going to have to be, do you think, to survive the opening laps of this one?
I think quite cautious, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you probably are going to be right, but you're going to have to get your elbows out at some point to move up the order. Anyway, Elliot, congratulations on that first race win. Best of luck for race 2. Elliot Dalton-Ayres then gets the win in race number 1. Second place was Scott Bugner, though, an important second place, and he is chatting now to Jack.
Yep, championship leader, of course, as well, Scott Bugner. All in all, a fairly positive result for you. I know you would have liked and you tried to get that one extra step on the podium, but all in all, a fairly decent haul of points.
Yeah, good haul of points. You know, if I wasn't going for the championship, you know, I might have, you know, got my elbows out a little bit there, but it's not worth the risk. It's just, you know, points, and, you know, we've outscored Max again. So, yeah, hopefully a clean race 2 and, you know, finish on a high.
I was going to say, did your attitude change towards the end of that race? Because we did see you really gunning for that victory on Elliot Dalton-Ayres at the beginning, but as soon as the likes of your teammate Joel Lask started lining up Max Edmondson, did your attitude change slightly?
Yeah, slightly. I could see Joel in the mirrors of Edmonton, and I thought, go on, if you can just get him, that's another couple of points, etc. But all in all, you know, yeah, it's not worth the risk. It's not worth throwing away, you know, maybe possibly 10, 15 points when, you know, we've now gone up to maybe, I don't know, 20, 28, 27 points. So, yeah, good result. Is it 30? Oh, there you go. So, yeah, hopefully just in this second race, you know, try and finish around Max Edmondson and roll on Donington.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on getting that second position. Very, very quickly, what's the aim for race 2 then? Because it's a little bit harder just to bank the points here.
Yeah, just follow the guys through, really. I think I'm going to try and follow Max Bird and, you know, try and get through the field where we can, but not pull any dangerous moves. You know, just get through and get the points.
Absolutely. It's tough around here at Croft, especially to pull through the order, but I'm sure you'll manage it, Scott. Good luck for race 2.
Yeah, congrats to Scott Bugner on that second place. Now, third place in the race was Max Bird. And Max, I'm looking back at your results from the season. I kind of assumed that we would have spoken to you quite a bit, but actually it's only your second appearance on the podium this season. Got to be happy with that.
Yeah, for sure. I've been struggling all season with tyre wear, really. I'm pushing the car quite hard. But yeah, great race with Scott and Elliot, and hopefully do the same this one.
Despite the fact that you've actually not been a regular on the podium, you've been quite consistent, and that puts you third in the championship coming into tonight. And obviously Max Edmondson's struggling a bit at this point of the season. Second place could potentially be up for grabs as well. So I think this is, for you as well, quite an important reverse grid race. If you score well out of this, you're right in the fight for that P2.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously Scott's going safe. I'm just going to be going all for it. So, you know, there's nothing to lose as far as I'm concerned. Obviously I'm up there in the championship, but, you know, you've got to get your elbows out, really.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and I think you will have to do that in this reverse grid race. Max, congrats on the podium. We'll let you go and finish your preparations for race 2. Best of luck.
Cheers, thank you.
So Max Bird then, third place in the championship coming into tonight. Jack, I think you've just been checking up on the updated points after race 1, and it's tight, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't try and do these calculations very often, but they're quite easy tonight. 6 points separate third, fourth, and fifth. That's Max Bird, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and Joel Lask. 6 points. So we can see them change around at the end of this. Well, Scott Bugner's 30 points ahead in the lead of the championship. Max Edmondson, no, he's under threat from Max Bird in third. 11 points the difference between second and third at the moment.
Yeah, so exactly. That's kind of the point, isn't it? Second down to 5th position is, what, 17 points or so?
Yeah.
And that is next to nothing, given how many points are still on offer. Race number 2 about to get underway then. John Jones and Brad Smith, row 1. Keep an eye to the yellow and black car of Nicky Taylor starting 3rd. Lights go out. Away they go. Good start made by Brad Smith by the looks of it from the outside of row 1. And he will try and get that lead as they head towards Clervaux Corner for the first time. John Jones stubbornly hanging on that inside line, though. We wait for them to turn into the first corner, and it is Smith that leads the way. It's Taylor second. Jones out wide. There's contact further back. I think that was Josh Martin. That sends people scattering 3-4 wide. There's absolute carnage through Hawthorne Corner, and that surely is going to have collected some of the championship contenders. Is gaining ground, but Edmondson, Max Edmondson, is in the pits with damage. Would you believe it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Edmondson actually started in the pits. He was very quick to come out after that contact. So that is a massive drama right in the front. I wouldn't be surprised if the safety car was called out. But Andy Carroll getting ahead of Carl Felvers. Brad Smith still leads the way. Who else was involved? Elliot Dalton Ayres has dropped down into 16th position. I believe Eric Axel. So there's more contact in the front. I was looking at my timing screen. Massive contact out of Tower Bend.
Andy Carroll involved. I think that might have been Dave Buki and Reese Bell on the grass as well. This is kind of what we feared. It's just a narrow, tight circuit, but actually quite high speed in areas. And so when you get this big difference in speed between the quick guys at the back and some of the slower guys at the front, this is the kind of stuff you can see happening. Brad Smith leads the way. Nicky Taylor going after him second. Mark Hughes in a really impressive 3rd place at the moment from Max Bird in 4th. That's a really good drive, that, from Max Bird, from 15th on the grid to 4th already. So he picked his way through that carnage really well, and he, of the front runners in the championship, the one looking strongest at the end of lap 1.
Yeah, he's doing very well, as I believe that's Dorman going through on Felvers. I'm not sure. I think Carroll and Felvers are actually battling, aren't they, coming out of the final corner. Brad Smith still leading the way is very impressive indeed. But Nicky Taylor, he's got his eyes on a race victory here. It didn't go his way in race number 1 for one reason or another. As I said, the stewards will decide what happens to him after that one. All he can focus on is trying to do well in this particular race. And at the moment, he's doing very well. But so is Brad Smith. They're pulling away from Mark Hughes, who, like you said, has had an absolutely brilliant race start himself. He's got a good gap between himself and Max Bird, then Josh Martin and Eric Axelson. A few of the sort of protagonists from race 1 are a lot further down the order, thanks to a lot of contact, obviously. Elliot Dalton Ayres still in 15th position. Max Edmondson down in 17th. Now, it's important, if Max Edmondson was involved in that contact at the beginning, if he jumped to the pit and then went back out, well, that's not allowed in VRRC. If you jump back to the pit in any session, you are disqualified from that session. So they might have to be having a word as going through, study in, study out, and it's Nicky Taylor trying to go through on Brad Smith. He managed to get the car stopped very impressively through Sunny in, and has actually got the apex through Sunny out as well. So I think Nicky Taylor may well have been released now. As Brad Smith, though, looks at the inside, tries to prove me wrong, going into the complex. There's going to be a little bit of contact, little bit, but not too much, luckily. Going into the double right-hander, it's still Nicky Taylor on the inside, but Smith is doing everything he can to try and hold on to this race lead.
Yeah, brilliant racing this, actually. 2 big lunges there, one from Taylor at Sunny and one from Brad into the complex, and it's Brad who comes out of it all with the lead again. So Brad Smith leads across the line. Nicky Taylor tucked right in the slipstream, though. Couldn't be closer to the number 26 car as it makes its way down towards Clervaux Corner from the outside to the inside. Beautiful driving that from Taylor. Really sold Brad Smith the dummy, and now it's Taylor back to the lead. The 3rd lead change in half a lap, that was, but now I reckon the HFT Racing driver might be able to get his head down here through Hawthorne into the chicane, and already look, the yellow and black car starting to scoot away slightly from Smith in 2nd place. Smith has realistically one more chance here, getting the slipstream down the straight. You can see Nicky Taylor weaving from side to side to try and prevent that from happening. Can Brad have a go under braking into Tower? You're on board with the 2nd place man, closes in under braking, but just misses the apex, and that now might be the last that he sees of Nicky Taylor.
Yeah, you get the impression that the bottle has been uncorked somewhat for Nicky Taylor, don't you? Because he was absolutely flying all over the back of Brad Smith. He's clearly got good pace. He's happy with the car now, hopefully, and he can really just push forward. He's got 15 minutes, obviously, to lead this race, but more importantly, the drivers who are probably going to threaten him most are the likes of Max Bird, currently in 4th position. Brad Smith goes very wide halfway through the Sunny complex. But Max Bird is a good 2.5 seconds back, although he might be slightly closer now as Mark Hughes runs very wide.
Yes, he does. Max Bird then looking to take that third place away. Is he going to be able to turn in? Well, sort of. Takes a wide line through the complex to avoid Hughes, but Bird does go through. So from 15th on the grid to 3rd for Bird. Inside the first 5 minutes, Bird is flying through the field. Dorman there trying to get to the outside of Hughes. There's contact. Couldn't quite tell whether that was Hughes or Axelson who got into Josh Martin there, but Martin gets a little bit sideways and manages to hang on around the outside. That gives him the inside, of course, for the run into Clairvaux. He's not going to try and get back up the inside of Hughes, is he? He's certainly looking. He's there almost. Hughes wants to turn in. There's inevitable contact. And actually Hughes, no, doesn't have the big save. He's off exit stage right. And poor old Mark Hughes will rejoin right at the back of that group.
I think he did do the save, actually, and then got a second instalment of speed up the rear end, shall we call it, which is a real shame, because he was running really well in 3rd position, and he had no one has any right to disrupt his flow, really, unless, obviously, they're a back marker, and he wasn't. He was there on valid reasons, so a bit of a shame there for Mark. Scott Bugner is another driver we need to keep an eye out on, obviously from race 1, 2nd position. He's currently in 11th place, not far away from this battle, but not close enough to be considered in it, you would argue. This is now actually the battle for 3rd position now, isn't it, with Max Bird, it's 4th, with Josh Martin, Eric Axelson, Andy Carroll, and Joel Lask all involved.
Yes, they are. Through Sunny they head then, and this is a really close battle then for 4th position. It's allowing Max Bird look to shoot away up the field. Now, Bird can definitely catch Brad Smith. Whether he can catch the leader, I'm not so sure. Axelson to the inside of Martin. They do just make me pause for a second when they make that lunge at the inside into the complex. Looks for all the world like they're going to make contact, but Axelson just managed to avoid making it there. Into the hairpin they will go. Lots of different lines taken, and there is now contact, but it's actually Axelson tabbed sideways. Sideways as well was Andy Carroll, but he almost converts that into a move. Pulls up alongside Joel Lask as they head down towards Clairvaux corner. Joel Lask now finds himself on the outside line. Kyle Felvers trying to join in as well. How's this all going to sort out? Axelson turns in. Carroll next. Lask around the outside of Kyle Felvers and stays in 7th place. Now, Scott Bugner is not making the progress I expected him to here. I wonder if that car's got a bit of damage, because the championship leader only in 11th place at the moment, and you'd think with all of this fighting going on up the road, he'd be able to catch them, but so far, not the case.
Yeah, I said that he's probably within touching distance of this battle, but I was absolutely wrong. He's 5 seconds away from Kenny Press. As that Joel Lask going up the inside of Andy Carroll as we ride on board with Carl Felvers, who one of the best seats in the house, who I believe gets a little bit of contact from behind him. No, actually, just a little bit of inertia through the front wheel, unfortunately for him, so he couldn't quite get the cut back, but he is watching Joel Lask, who seems to have successfully got that place on Andy Carroll. Andy going into the study complex, looking at the inside, trying to fill the mirrors. It's going to be a difficult move, though, as they hit the brakes. He doesn't quite go for it. Probably sensible, I would say, that one, Andy, from Andy Carroll. Just trying to sort of establish themselves in this battle. There's always other opportunities to go for those race moves. He doesn't need to rush it.
No, he does not at all. Andy Carroll has had a steadily decent season, actually. Twice he's been on the podium, Andy Carroll. Now, yes, it's both been in reverse grid races. Whoops, that is Scott Bugner just surviving, I think. Another tangle there between John Jones and Andy Dorman. Dorman's had a real night to forget, hasn't he? But that happened somewhere in and around where Bugner was, because Bugner was 11th, so he did lose out in that then. So the points leader having a really disastrous race, and that unfortunately makes what happened to Edmondson at the start of the race even more unfortunate, because he could have, and arguably should have, been taking big points out of Bugner here, but Bugner now able to rely on that big championship lead that he's built up, and he should still come out of this race, even if he non-finished, with a decent championship lead. Bugner 13th then, and lucky again to survive another moment.
I was going to say, he must have been involved because, of course, Elliot Dalton has got past him now as Max Bird looks to get past Brad Smith. I was going to call him Ben Smith for some unknown reason. We're going through Tower Bend. Bird does get through, so Bird is the biggest scorer of the points in terms of championship standings that we've been talking about all evening long. Joel Lask currently in 6th position. He's currently in 5th position in the championship, so again, he's scoring some half-decent points against the likes of Max Edmondson and Max Bird. Sorry, not Max Bird. Elliot Dalton-Ez. So this is good at all change, isn't it? Croft is certainly proving what we were saying at the beginning, Andy, in that it's a very difficult track, it's very complex, and it's not easy to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. As you saw there in the battle between Max Bird and Brad Smith in the second place, that little bit of contact they made at Tower Corner, you know, it was an aggressive move from Bird, and it had to be. It's the only way he was going to get through. Now, is Andy Carroll setting up for an aggressive move here on Kyle Felvers? Not into the hairpin, he is not. Reece Bell, by the way, ahead of Scott Buckner now. So Buckner 14th place, and Buckner's car must have a little bit, well, maybe more than a little bit of damage to be fading down the order like this. Let's have a look. And look who is on his tail. Max Edmondson. That's not Buckner pulling out of his way, is it? Surely not. Buckner mirror signal maneuver. Gets out of the way of Max Edmondson. He will allow his championship rival through because he knows he doesn't have to beat him in this race. He can afford to just tag along with Edmondson, and also there is this potential penalty looming over Edmondson if he did fast track back to the pit lane and then rejoin. So absolutely no point getting involved in that fight if you're Buckner.
Yeah, absolutely. He knows, like you mentioned, that Edmondson may well have a penalty, but more to the point, I think, because Buckner might not know that Edmondson has that looming over his head. Look at his wheel. It's slightly off. He's actually crabbing ever so slightly. Now, that could be really dangerous, and probably the reason why he's let Edmondson through, and probably everybody else as well, is the fact that if he causes an accident, he'll be punished a lot more than if he just finishes in 15th place and quietly goes about his business. If he ends up with a disqualification or something, he won't score any points, whereas if he's 15th, I believe he still scores a small amount of points, in fact 6 points, so it's still not the end of the world, whereas if he got disqualified or got punished for causing an incident, he would lose all of that. So good driving by Scott Buckner, and fair driving, good sportsmanship and all.
Yeah, absolutely, and sensible stuff. Champions drive that. Now, that's less sensible. That was Josh Martin into the left rear corner of Brad Smith's car. I do not envy the position that Brad Smith finds himself in now, because he's been quietly minding his own business in the podium positions. Briefly led the race earlier on, of course, had that good battle with Taylor, decent battle with Max Bird as well, and now he's got a whole queue of and hungry drivers lining up behind him. Josh Martin is the Motorsport liveried car directly behind him, then the green machine of Eric Axelson, the black, pink and green of Joel Lask in 6th position. Kyle Felvers and Andy Carroll aren't far back either, and they're going to go side by side through the chicane. That is not a good place to go wheel to wheel, and in fairness there to Brad Smith, stands his ground well, hangs on to the place, and now Eric Axelson tries to join in the fun on the outside line.
I don't know how they did that, because to be honest, I crashed. Oh no, there's a big lunge, that one, isn't it? Is that Josh Martin going through Brad Smith? He's had enough, as Axelson gets a big hit from the side as well from Joel Lask. So it's all kicking off a little bit here, isn't it, Andy? It's getting a little bit feisty in the last 7.5 minutes.
Yeah, that's one word for it. That was a real aggressive move, that from Martin on the inside. He gets 3rd place, but I think Smith may try and retaliate here. He does, goes up the inside into Sonny. Wait for it. No contact, amazingly. And Smith goes through. There is contact further, but Axelson turns Joel Lask. Oh, Joel Lask off onto the grass. He's going to be joined right in front of Axelson, who, if he's sensible, will not take that place away from him, because that certainly looked like a little bit of avoidable contact. Axelson actually dropping more places. Look, that's Kenny Press going up the inside of Mark Hughes into 7th position. But moving on from that, what a brilliant move that was from Brad Smith to get back up the inside of Josh Martin and back into this podium place. Great stuff. Martin losing out now to Felvers as Joel Lask is sideways again.
Yep, I think Kenny Press was involved in that one, and almost pretty much instantly afterwards turned Eric Axelson round. Yeah, it's a shame we have to unpack everything that just happened in that previous lap to find the sort of one good, clean overtaking manoeuvre. But it is what's happened, as in front of our eyes, we see Carl Felvers getting into the back of Brad Smith, opening the door up for Josh Martin and himself to go through. It's getting a little bit difficult, and these reverse grids are prone to this slightly, aren't they, Andy? Where, especially full reverse grids, where you have very quick drivers coming through on a very narrow circuit and slightly out of position drivers going backwards by the looks of it, as Carl Felvers gets lunged by Brad Smith, who clearly wasn't having any of it, and they make contact, and Carl Felvers' car gets very sideways. He's going to manage to hold it. I'll tell you what, that's fairly impressive, actually. He hasn't lost that many positions. Only Andy Carroll's gotten through. He won't be happy about it, but the important thing is he did survive that, which at one point I didn't think he would.
Yes, Croft known for its history in rallycross racing, of course. I think Carl Felvers thought perhaps he was contesting a round of the British Rallycross Championship there, completely sideways, all over the grass, bouncing into the air, and somehow managed to save it. You'll hear us motorsport commentators talk often about red mist. If you've ever wondered what the red mist is, well, you're seeing it here in this battle. This is a group of drivers, particularly in this fight for third place on back, who are not happy with each other. Someone roughs someone up, so then the driver that gets roughed up thinks, right, I'll give you a taste of your own medicine. Then he gets the place back. Then, of course, the person that initially made the move feels hard done by again, and it all just starts to escalate. And it's just these tiny little taps that can unsettle a car, get someone sideways, and it's so tempting to do, especially when you're in a tin top series like this one, just to use the bumper to aggravate the driver ahead, to get your own back on the driver ahead. It's all calmed down for the time being, and I hope it stays that way for the remaining 5 minutes. Daybuki and Reese Bell back together. I fear here, Jack, that I'm going to instantly regret it saying that it's going to calm down, because these two, remember, tangled in the previous race, and they're after each other again.
Yeah, it looks like that one. Daybuki with his front end hanging off, and Reese Bell with his rear end hanging off. And I'm not saying that it was both of those drivers, as Reese Bell goes straight on after a little bit of bump and contact there from the two of them, but I'm not entirely sure. I mean, to be honest, it's better that Reese Bell does that, because two drivers don't really go through that chicane quite right, do they? As Daybuki goes towards the aim, I genuinely thought he was just aiming at that point, but luckily it does make the corner. You're absolutely right about the red mist, though, isn't it? About that sort of this battle that we're currently watching. It's almost like the personification of a Twitter conversation, isn't it? When something says someone slightly wrong, someone says something slightly wrong or something, then somebody gets more irate about it, and more irate, and all of a sudden it's trending, and everything's blown up in their faces. And that's exactly sort of what we're seeing with this battle potentially. Luckily, they seem to have gapped each other somewhat. Nicky Taylor in the lead by nearly 6 seconds, 5.5 seconds to Max Bird, who's in second by 5.5 seconds roughly to Josh Martin, who's got about 1.5 seconds to Brad Smith. And then that's the battle you're watching right now, with Andy Carroll trying to chase down Brad Smith, and then Carl Felber's about 1.5 seconds behind. So with 3.5 minutes to go, I thought Andy Carroll was going to prove me wrong, but they seem to have sorted themselves out as Brad Smith loses it. Now, we were on board with Andy Carroll. It didn't look like there was any major contact. I didn't hear anything, but to be fair, I don't have the sound of the cars in my earphones. So I hope there wasn't any contact, but it's gutting to see Brad Smith, who for the most part had driven pretty well, ends up falling off the road.
Yeah, I'm 99% sure there was no contact. If there was, it was on the way into Clairvaux, and that was long before Smith got sideways. That's a shame that after Smith's fighting drive to try and stay inside that top 5 or so, unfortunately, all starts to unravel, and, well, poor old Brad Smith will rejoin the track down in 10th place, interestingly, just 1 place ahead of Max Edmondson, who's gained a few more positions now since we last saw him. Yes, Elliot Dalton-Ayres into the back of Daybuki. I shall tell you what I'm seeing happening. I'm not going to go any further than that. Daybuki with a bit of stunt driving there as he reverses back into the track at Tower Corner. Paul Swift would have been pretty proud of that little J-turn, I think. Right, let's get back to some clean racing, he says, hopefully. 2 minutes and 20 seconds left on the clock, and Eric Atkinson on the tail of Joel Lask here, with Mark Hughes ahead. Now, there are a few drivers here, Jack, having the race of their season, really. Andy Carroll in 4th place, on merit as well. He didn't really start all that high on the grid, but he's up there in 4th position. And Mark Hughes, having lost ground initially, now picking his way back through into 6th position. Can he hang on for the last 2 laps?
Tell you what, you can tell that you're the experienced commentator. Let's pull the positives out of this one, shall we? And you're absolutely right to do so, because Mark Hughes, who did end up falling really far down, you're absolutely right. It's picking his way back up. He's trying to be as consistent as possible. Probably knows full well that he's not as quick as the drivers who are currently chasing him down, i.e. the likes of Joel Lask and Eric Axelsson. But to be fair, I don't remember him doing anything malicious or sort of untrustworthy, shall we say. As they're going towards Tower Bend, he may well lose a position, but he's defending hard, he's defending fair. As he hits the braking zone, he gets absolutely sent off to the apex, and he comes back across the track and ends up grass cutting in the local field.
Right, okay. Mark Hughes rejoins now. Outside of the top 10, is he going to be? Yes, I think he will be, because Max Edmondson's going to end up with a top 6 here before the end of the race, the way this is going. It might not stand if he does get this penalty for refreshing back to the pit lane, but he's into 10th place and not a million miles behind that group of cars fighting up the road. I'm worried, I'm scared to draw attention to anyone now, because every time we do, we seem to cut to them pointing the wrong way and heading towards a field somewhere. So let's see if we can get through this final lap without any more major dramas. Side by side into the complex here. Joel Lask is 7th. Kenny Press is in 8th place. Now, Kenny, we haven't seen up to too many shenanigans yet in this race. He's got a lap and a bit left to try and get 7th place away from Joel Lask. Joel will not be happy with this. This was another opportunity for him to try and really get some points back on those ahead of him in the championship. And 7th place, not really the result he would have hoped for.
No, and I mean, you just mentioned Kenny Press there on our screens being not that involved. Yeah, he only half turned around Josh Martin and almost turned around Eric Axelson. And in the grand scheme of this race, that's pretty clean, I think. So, yeah, it's fair play to him. But Joel Lask, I mean, it's a bit of an average day for him, isn't it, I think, Joel? Obviously, Silverstone was a bit of a highlight of his season. He is very fast in these front-wheel drive machines, but and he isn't sort of getting involved too much in all the paraphernalia around him, as Dave Buki is trying to go home, by the looks of it.
I don't blame him.
Yeah, at this rate, yeah, no. But this driver has actually ignored it all, really, hasn't he, Nicky Taylor? As soon as he got into the race lead, he's driven away with no questions asked, as he gives a little bit of a wave to Dave Buki through sunny out. And he's survived all of it. He probably doesn't even know most of what's going on this race. He doesn't know all the drama that he's avoided because he's been in the race lead and he's been brilliant.
Yeah, sometimes drivers complain that they don't get enough TV time when they're winning races by 7 seconds. But believe me, Nicky, when you watch this race back, you'll be glad that we didn't see much of you, because it means that you avoided the worst of the trouble. Had a brilliant battle, of course, earlier on to get the lead away from Brad Smith. And Nicky Taylor is going to get his first victory in the VRRC Civic Cup. And he gets it in dominant fashion. Dave Buki celebrates 16th, whilst Max Bird comes home in 2nd position. Josh Martin in 3rd, and Andy Carroll in 4th position. That's a really good drive, that, from Andy. Kyle Felvers in 5th position, Axelson 6th, and Joel Lask will fend off Kenny Press for 7th position. Now behind Brad Smith and Max Edmondson in a drag race to the line. Edmondson 9th on the road. Put a little question mark next to that, because we need to get to the bottom of exactly what happened to him at the start of the race. But if he does get to keep that 9th place, it could be big for the championship, because the championship leader, Scott Buckner, has not yet got to the finish line. He will cross that line in a lowly 15th place. The first time all season, Jack, that Buckner has been out of the top 5.
Yeah, it's. I mean, he has still got the championship lead as far as we're aware, so I'm sure he won't mind too much. But he would have liked to have done the clean sweep for the championship. Of course, we will end up having a chat to our podium drivers. Also, we've sort of got to do driver of the round, which is going to be, I think, slightly difficult, this one, because Nicky Taylor, although drove brilliantly in race 2, has, let's face it, an asterisk to a question mark in race 1, and all this, that, and the other. So whilst you chat to our race winner, Nicky Taylor, Andy, maybe we'll have a chat in the Discord between the admins and see who maybe drums up ideas for driver of the round.
Yeah, don't ask me. I haven't got a clue. I couldn't tell you half the things that happened in that race. What I can tell you is that Nicky Taylor has got his first victory of the season, and he joins us now in the commentary box. Nicky, I was saying on that final lap that was about all we'd seen of you, really, since you got the race lead. Believe me, that's not a bad thing, because it means you weren't involved in everything happening behind you. A brilliant drive, though. You started towards the front of the grid and absolutely made the most of it.
Yeah, I mean, race 1 went great. Had a little contact with Josh Martin, but he was fine with it. And yeah, I couldn't have done much, and then let off for him. And then Dave Buki into the fast right-hander. I won't put any blame towards that, because I don't want to start an argument on live. But yeah, anyway, best way to do it. Last race I'm doing of the season and won it, so go out with a bang. And yeah, can't do Donington because I'm at college, but yeah, finally got the hang of the car.
So you've got an actual excuse for not racing at Donington then. You're not off on another holiday somewhere, then I'll let you off for that. It's been great to have you around here in the Civic Cup. It's a shame we didn't have you all season, because it's clearly a car you get on with well.
No. I dislike this mob with a passion. I'm normally, it should suit me to the ground with being front wheel drive, and I drive minis in real life, so this should basically suit me to the T, but I don't gel with the mod because it doesn't drive like how I would think, and I just don't like the mod. But it is what it is. I got through, and yeah, just got on with it and got my head down, and I think it pays dividend that I love Croft with a passion, and yeah, just got through on Croft and just done my thing.
So Croft is a circuit you get on with then in real life. What is it about Croft that you enjoy?
It's basically like a massive kart circuit, and someone coming from karting and doing like British level in karting, it's quite fun. And yeah, I don't know why it is, because it's 5 hours away from me, so I shouldn't be that inclined to it. But yeah, I just love the circuit. It flows with my driving style. So yeah, Elliot was just rapid in quality and everything. So yeah, but consistently doing 35 in the race was, I think, quick enough, and just tried to maintain the gap to Max, and yeah, just break away.
Well, it was a brilliant performance, a brilliant battle. We really enjoyed that fight that you had in the early part of the race for the race lead. Congratulations on that victory, and we'll see you again next season, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, should be doing touring car, or whatever it is. So we'll see how that goes.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Nicky Taylor then gets that first victory and bows out of the VRRC Civic Cup with style. He's the race winner, but Jack is with our runner-up.
I should be, if I unmuted my mic, that would be. Yeah, we've got Max Bird in the chat for the second time tonight. Max, a fairly happy, all in all, a fairly happy evening, I imagine, for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think I was up to P4 by the end of the first lap, so yeah, it was great racing, and obviously Nicky had a bit more pace than me in that one. As I said before, I was still sort of struggling with the tyres, trying to work out what tyre pressures worked for me, but all in all, yeah, good.
How difficult was it, that opening lap, though? Because it was a bit of survival, wasn't it, really? Was it luck? Was it car placement? Could you see what was happening in front of you and what might transpire? Because a few of your championship rivals didn't get so lucky and didn't quite catch it early enough either, and that's why they've fallen well down the order. Was it as stressful as it looked on stream?
Yeah, for sure. I think I just took advantage of the other guys and where they were going. I'm pretty lucky, to be fair, out of tower. I think there was some contact with some other drivers and cars coming off across the front of me, but I managed to keep out of it and yeah, score some good points.
Fantastic. Well, what I can say about your point situation as well is that we went into this round and there was a two-way battle for the championship lead, and there was a three-way battle for third position. But you've absolutely blown that out of the water now. Matt, you are now 2 points behind Max Edmondson in second place. Are you dying to get your hands on that SimRace 3 rig?
Yeah, for sure. I like Donington Park as well in real life and on the Sims, so we'll be winning there hopefully.
Fingers crossed for you, and well, fingers crossed we'll be having a chat to you anyway next time out, obviously for the final round of the season. Max Bird, congratulations on the double podium, and hopefully we'll see you at Donington.
You definitely will.
Good stuff. Max Bird then, yeah, 2 points behind Max Edmondson. Of course, that could change if Edmondson gets the penalty. Now, I think we also agree. Did you do the driver of the day bit there, Jack?
Yeah, to be honest, I completely forgot about that because we were still talking about it slightly. But yes, absolutely, driver of the day to Max Bird as well. Congratulations, Max.
Perfect, thank you.
There we go. Glad he didn't run off after the interview. So, Power Max Valeting kit heading the way of Max Bird. Apologies, everyone. It's been quite the last 25 minutes or so. Quite a lot to wrap our heads around. The last thing we need to wrap our heads around is the fact that Josh Martin was on the podium in that race. Third place finish for Josh in that one. Congratulations, second appearance on the podium this season. It makes up a bit for what wasn't an ideal Silverstone, was it?
No, that's the first round of this series that I've not been worrying about internet problems or had some other technical problem. No, I had good race pace. Qualifying was quite tight actually. I think I was 7th, but there wasn't much of a gap between everyone. It's just trying to get a lap without bouncing. And yeah, the VR didn't fog up, internet didn't drop out, so it was all good. Made it to the end.
It does make it easier when you can see where you're going and everyone else can see where you are on track. I mean, these are the things that can only really affect you in sim racing, not in the real world. But they can be tricky to deal with, I'd imagine.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to worry about your internet dropping out in the real world.
No, exactly. Huge congratulations, though. That podium finish coming at a nice time and sets you up nicely, hopefully, now, if you've got on top of all of those tech issues for Donington Park next time out. Is Donington a circuit you're confident in your performance at?
Yeah, I'm all sorted with the tech issues now. The internet's all done. But yeah, Donington's probably my favourite track to drive and the track I've got the most amount of laps on. So really enjoy it. So looking forward to that one. Hopefully I'll be right at the front.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Sounds like quite a few drivers looking forward to Donington Park, as are we. Josh, congratulations on the podium finish. We'll see you next week.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Right then, everyone, that is that. That was rounds 9 and 10 of the VRRC Civic Cup. Quite a lot to talk about there, Jack. Some of it more positive than others. What we can tell you is we do not yet have a champion, because Scott Bugner is not far enough ahead in the points to be wrapped to have the title wrapped up, so it will go down to that final round, regardless of what they do with Max Edmondson, because as Jack made the point, Max Bird is only actually 2 points further back from Max Edmondson. The gap between second and third, you can see, remarkably tight. And mathematically, I think I'm right in saying that Joel Lask and Elliot Dalton-Ayres could still take the title as well if Buckner were to have a disappointing time at Donington. And as we saw, Jack, it can happen. Okay, Edmondson wasn't able to take full advantage of it in this race, but Scott Buckner proved tonight that he is not invulnerable, and he will be a little bit nervy, I'm sure, heading to Donington.
Yeah, you've got to make sure that you're consistent. I mean, a lot of people say, and I don't like the saying as a driver, but a lot of people do say, you're only as good as your last race. Now, Bugner will be hoping that that is not true at all, because he's been fantastic in this championship so far. And, you know, but he will be slightly worried. He'll maybe starting to sweat it. He might actually jump on the sim a little bit more to practice, because he had that poor result. And he pretty much can only have one poor result, if that, in a championship and come out on top. So Bugner really needs to make sure he's nice, calm and collected and confident going into Donington Park. But the battle for second heated up as well, and now I'd probably say the battle for fourth, fifth as well. He's still got Eric Axelsson involved, potentially Josh Martin, but it's a bit of a stretch. So really, we're probably going into it thinking Max Edmondson, Max Bird, who's going to get that SimRace 5.
Yeah, certainly wouldn't count Axelsson or Martin out of the fight for fifth, maybe. They could get themselves into the prize-giving positions. And, of course, these could all change if there are post-race judicials, which I think there may be one or two of, perhaps, which we'll try and bring you news of at the start of next week's broadcast. Do head over to the VRRC social media pages and whatnot for all the up-to-date look at what's going on in the world of the VRRC, not just within this championship, but the many other championships that the VRRC run. This is just a small part, Jack, of what the VRRC has to offer. So if you do want to get involved in racing, then this is what you need to do.
Absolutely, yeah. To be honest, I forgot we did this, so this might be a little bit rusty. Forza Horizon 5, obviously there's a lovely little section in our Discord that allows you to sort of basically socialise and chat about Forza Horizon 5, which is always a very good fun for the casual sim racers amongst you. Assetto Corsa, that's what we run our Civic Cup Championship on, that's what we run all our official competitions on, as well as the Fun Cup round on a Saturday night even, which I believe at the moment it's a BMW M2. I might be wrong there, I might get told off, but I think it is an M2. And then you've got Assetto Corsa Competizione weekly endurance races. Apparently I'm correct, it is a BMW M2 on the Saturday fun races. You don't need to be a member of VRRC at all. You could just be some random person tuning in for this at this particular point on YouTube and think, you know what, yeah, I'll give it a go. It's a fun, free race with a load of good drivers. I'll enter that one as well. Saturday night, be there or be square. And lastly, Dirt Rally 2.0. Monday to Sunday, we have weekly stages and Rally Cross ran by Dave Marshall. Dirt Rally is his favourite sim to be on, so he always takes extra care of the Dirt Rally service. So by all means, jump into that competition as well. And if you want any information of VRRC, of the sim rigs that we sell, or any of the competitions that we run, or the sims that we run, and then you can head over into our website. That's what I was going to say, YouTube page, but onto the website, which is in the description below, or the Discord, which is also in the description below.
Yes, indeed. So head over to that Discord page for all of the news from this Civic Cup Championship, but also for information, as Jack said, on how to get out there on track or on the rally stages yourself. Right then, that was a dramatic pair of races here at Croft. It sets us up nicely for the championship decider at Donington in a week's time. Make sure to join us there. The Donington Park Circuit, one of my personal favourites in the country. Sounds like lots of the drivers are looking forward to it as well, so I'm sure we're going to have another night of action-packed racing. But for now, though, from myself, Andy McEwen, and Jack Oliphant, and everyone else here at the VRRC, we've enjoyed bringing you the action here from Croft. We're looking forward to doing the same again next week. Hope you'll be there to join us.